Good morning, everyone. This is Russell Rucker, and I'm here for another Constitutional Talk. And I think this week we have to discuss some aspects of gerrymandering, especially with the recent Supreme Court decision on the case from Louisiana, where the Supreme Court ruled that you can no longer use race in drawing congressional maps. Now, the whole purpose of drawing your maps comes from the idea that each district should be relative to every other district in numbers. Now, when you look at states like Louisiana, you have the Mississippi River rolling through it, which has a definite different concern than, say, the oil industry or a shipping down south or farming that would be in that state. And so each district in your state should be developed so that everyone is represented in Congress. So if you have a state that's mostly a farm state, like, say, Iowa, then pretty much everything is about farming and maybe some city concerns, some urban concerns. So you have a couple of different things there, but you also have manufacturing in the state. You have different things depending on what state you're in. Now, if you start talking about states like Wisconsin, Illinois, along the Great Lakes, you have shipping coming in, you have transportation, you have a lot of different things. So when you draw up your lines, you should draw it up so each concern has some level of understanding in it. The idea of drawing by race so that blacks can represent only a black would then be elected is the objective here. Well, then you would have to set up districts where only whites would be elected, only people from German descendants, from Irish descendants. This isn't really the real way to do this. But what the Supreme Court has done in striking down racial gerrymandering, they've put a red light to political gerrymandering, or gerrymandering based on ideology. And I think that's a big mistake too. Gerrymandering either way is not a good idea when you're sitting there choosing for political reasons which party is going to come out on top. And they did ask the president about the decision, and he asked whether it benefited Republicans or Democrats. This is not the way we should look at things. We should look at the idea that no one is excluded from government, that every concern is attended to, whether you're a farmer, whether you live in the city, whether you're engaged in shipping. All those things matter, and everyone should have a seat at the table. And that's the objective of redistricting. Now, Elbridge Gerry, he was really a fascinating fellow, considered to be one of our actual greatest founders. And he is the only founder that's buried in D.C. And when this came up the other day, I decided I was going to read through Mr. Gerry's, or a lot of it here, in what the situation is. And this is from my book, The Founders Encyclopedia. And I'm just going to jump in here and into what pertains. During the state ratification process, he published articles in opposition to the Constitution. That's during ratification. That's following the convention. And he was ridiculed for that in opposing the Constitution. In 1788, John Hancock defeated him for the governor seat, primarily due to his constitutional opposition. He was elected to 2 terms in the House of Representatives and was instrumental in getting approval of the Bill of Rights through Congress. The Bill of Rights is our first 10 amendments plus the 27th. It was approved much later because they actually sent 12 up. John Adams sent him as a diplomat to France and was there through the XYZ affair. And the XYZ affair was a situation where they wanted a kickback and they had to sign on lines X, Y, and Z, and he refused. In 1800, he joined the Republican Party and ran for the governor of Massachusetts. And when I say the Republican Party, I'm not discussing the party of Lincoln. Not in 1800. We're talking about Jeffersonian Republicans. So he ran for Massachusetts as a Republican. And he lost. And he won again, eventually winning in 1810. And during this redistricting process, and that's where his name is linked to redistricting. This is why they call it gerrymandering. He signed a bill that gave the Republicans more power by drawing a district in the shape of a salamander. The papers coined the phrase attacking him as gerrymandering. The phrase sticks to this day. He lost his seat in 1812, only to be chosen by James Madison as his vice president. Due to the hyper-partisanship during the War of 1812, he spent a lot of time in the Senate as president of the Senate, a position he had earlier opposed in the Constitutional Convention. He took sick, had a heart attack, and still tried to take his carriage to Congress, but was too ill and was taken home, and he died in bed. He was buried in Washington, D.C., the only signer to do so. John Adams had some real kind things to say about Mr. Gary, saying if everybody was a Gary, that liberty would be safe, that our republic would be safe from tyranny. Gary wasn't a nobody. He served in the Continental Congress. He served in the convention. He served as governor. He was a diplomat overseas. He was really, really an important founder, and he was also Madison's vice president. But when we talk about what he's remembered for in gerrymandering and the drawing of that seat in the shape of a salamander, and that's where we get gerrymandering through, is where you divide up a state based on power that you will achieve later. So therefore, you will get more Republicans or more Democrats based on how the map is drawn. And this is what's important and why I personally am opposed to gerrymandering. And Washington, in his farewell address, spoke out against parties, against party power, against being loyal to one's party instead of loyal to the country. And I think this all comes into play here when you start talking about redrawing lines for political power. I don't have a problem with you drawing a line, say, to carve out an area that would represent shipping, sailing, an area that would represent a military aspect because you have more bases in that area, that you're carving out areas that are primarily farming, areas that are primarily have urban area decisions. All those things come to play. Now, when we start talking about the Second Amendment and your right to keep and bear arms, there's an entire difference in the way that people think in a rural area where they're going out and doing a lot of hunting for sport than the kind of people that are fearful of the weaponry because they're used for mass shootings in the cities. And this is a good example of why we need people representing the urban and why we need people representing the rural. Because they see things in different ways. And we need to hash out those differences when we're talking about lawmaking and writing legislation. This is why it's important to have these differences. The political power is something that should really be avoided. Everyone should have a chance to be represented by people who think like they do. And in order to do that, we need to divide up districts based on different concerns that you would have in any part of the state. And this really is the objective and the thinking of our founders when they set up this system. So I agree with the Supreme Court that we shouldn't have racially gerrymandered districts. I don't have a problem with that at all. But it's the other part of the decision that bothers me, saying that they have every right to draw it for political reasons, for partisanship. And I think that also is a problem. I truly believe the way Washington believed, that parties can be a problem. And yes, if you have one party running to draw mass for power on one side, you have no choice but to do it on the other side. And really, that's what's happened over the last 30 or 40 years. Parties have been changing lines, and so that their side would get elected or re-elected more than the other one side. And they have been drawing these seats. It's called redlining, actually, where they draw lines around different areas for political party reasons, for power reasons. Our Constitution was written up to divide power as much as possible so that no one would have a clear advantage. And this is what we need to get back to. We need to get back to this understanding. Should a state have 10 seats and all of them represented by a Republican? Should the state have 10 seats and all represented by Democrats? And I think the answer to both is no. That it should be set up in such a way that both sides have a relative equal chance of winning elections. Because then we have both sides at the table. We have both arguments in play whenever we write up legislation. And we should not be afraid to listen to the other opponents, listen to our opponents' arguments over this or that. We should all be at the same table discussing to hash out law for the best of our constituents, to the best of our fellow citizens. And with that in mind, we'll catch you next time on the next Constitution Talk. You folks have a good day for now, and think about it. Think about why we should try not to be gerrymandering, that we need an equal process of having equal districts. We'll talk to you next time on the next Constitution Talk. Have a good day, folks, for now. Bye.